Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind Show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below and hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward. On this channel, we discuss lots of motorsports, namely NASCAR, ARCA, IndyCar, and Formula One. We do plan to broaden that scope eventually, but for now, that's what we cover. So on today's edition of the Cup Series Rewind Show, we're looking back at last night's Coke Zero 60th Annual Coke Zero Sugar 400 from the Daytona International Speedway. Actually ended up being the Coke Zero Sugar 420 as we went 168 laps in this one. Well into overtime. It took a while to get through this race. Lots of stuff happening in this one, so we'll just jump right into it. We do have a little bit of highlights for you. 10 caution flags on the night for 46 laps. Nothing happening really in stage number 1. That concluded lap 42 with Ricky Stenhouse, the winner of stage number 1. Stage 2 was when things started to get crazy. First caution for an incident on the night was at lap 50 with the three-car incident on the front stretch between Paul Menard, Jimmy Johnson, and David Reagan. Shortly afterward, a couple laps after going back to green, big one on the backstretch, big one number 1 for the night, entering turn number 3. Ricky Stenhouse had a little bit of an ill-timed bump draft to the back of Brad Keselowski as William Byron, the leader at the time, came down kind of managing lanes. Keselowski had to check up. Stenhouse gets into the back of him. That turns Keselowski up the track. Lots of cars involved in this one. Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott, Erik Almirola, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Ty Dillon, Clint Boyer, Ricky Stenhouse, Daniel Suarez, Paul Menard, Joey Logano, Kurt Busch, Kyle Larson, Bubba Wallace, Jimmy Johnson, Alex Bowman, Casey Kane, Corey LaJoie, Martin Truex, Jamie McMurray, Jeffrey Earnhardt, Matt DiBenedetto, Michael McDowell. Just a huge list of cars involved in this one. 22 total involved in this wreck into turn number 3. So over half the field involved in this wreck, and we're not even halfway through this race. So about on par for a typical Daytona race. So a few laps later, lap 66, another incident kind of set off by Ricky Stenhouse, aggressively side drafting again in third. Kyle Busch on the top lane, William Byron on the bottom in front of Ricky Stenhouse. Byron goes up a little bit, or it was more Kyle Busch came down a little bit to side draft William Byron. Ricky Stenhouse goes up to side draft Kyle Busch and does it a little too aggressively, actually gets into Kyle Busch, turns Busch into William Byron. That sets off another incident in turn number 4 involving Jamie McMurray, Trevor Bayne, Stenhouse again, Kyle Busch, Erik Jones, William Byron, and Corey LaJoie again involved in this one. So not quite as many cars involved in this one, but we had less cars left in the pack at this point, and they would continue to dwindle going forward. Stage 2 concludes lap 82. Again, Ricky Stenhouse wins stage number 2. Things continued to stay crazy in stage number 3. Lap 125, caution for green flag pit stops cycling through. Not really sure what happened here. Kyle Larson had just pitted a couple laps before and ends up blowing a left rear tire going into turn number 3. Spins it around and actually collects Ricky Stenhouse, who is trying to merge back into traffic after just having pitted. So that would be the end of really the competitive night for Ricky Stenhouse after kind of triggering 2 wrecks before that, getting caught up in someone else's wreck now. Lap 134, DJ Kennington spins on the backstretch, bringing out the caution. Lap 151, Ricky Stenhouse spins again on the front stretch. He had blown a left rear tire this time, so Now the, fourth caution Ricky Stenhouse has been involved in on the night, and we're only at lap 150. Well, I guess that's 10 laps from the scheduled distance, so we're getting close to the end of the race. Lap 157, this is the caution that would spur the first overtime period. Coming through turn number 3, Jimmy Johnson, Erik Almirola, Joey Gase in the 00, and Michael McDowell all get collected, and that is what would set up overtime number 1. There would be 2 overtimes. Lap 163, we would get yet another caution as they come through the tri-oval. Martin Truex Jr., the leader at the time, is just feet from the start-finish line, and they throw the caution. Yet another big one here in the tri-oval, this one involving Kevin Harvick, Clint Boyer, Bubba Wallace, Jimmy Johnson, Trevor Bayne, Ricky Stenhouse, Brendan Gaughan, and Alex Bowman, among others. This would set up a 5-minute red flag as they got the tri-oval cleaned up. Then we got back to racing, and there weren't many competitive cars left at this point. I counted about 8, maybe 10 cars that either had very little damage or no damage that could actually be somewhat competitive on this restart. I mean, we had really dwindled the field down at this point. So they take the green flag. Erik Jones, Martin Truex Jr. on the front row. And Erik Jones doesn't quite get a great restart. In fact, Truex jumps out to the lead. But then on the backstretch, final lap, Erik Jones takes the lead with a great move. Actually kind of set up by Kasey Kahne, more or less distracting Truex, trying to take the lead. And then Jones kind of throws it around the high side. And takes the lead, and Erik Jones comes away with his first career Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series victory. If you'd asked me going into the night if Erik Jones would win the race, I'd have said probably not, but again, it's Daytona, so you never really know who's going to win these races. It's just, at this point, it's a matter of survival. Especially this race. I feel like this race was more carnage-filled than most plate races we've had in recent years. This one was just absolutely crazy. There wasn't hardly anybody left at the end of this race. I know you could probably say that for most plate races, but I feel like there were less competitive. And competitive, I'm using that as a very loose term here. I feel like there were less competitive cars left at the end of this one than what we usually have at the end of a Daytona or a Talladega race. It just, I don't know. I don't really know what I watched last night, to be honest with you. It was crazy. It was very crazy. So let's get into the results for the night. Obviously, as we said, Erik Jones picks up his first career victory. Martin Truex Jr. comes home in the second position. AJ Allmendinger continues his top 10 streak at Daytona with a third place finish. Kasey Kahne came oh so close to that first win for Levine Family Racing, comes home in the fourth position. And we get both JTG Doherty cars in the top 5 this week, with Chris Buescher in 5th. The rest of your top 10, Ty Dillon, Matt DiBenedetto, Ryan Newman, Austin Dillon, and Alex Bowman. And as you'll notice as we go down here through the results, I noticed this earlier when I was looking through here. For whatever reason, it's a very odd coincidence, but a lot of cars from the same teams ended up next to each other on the results here. Like, you have Austin Dillon and Ryan Newman here 8th and 9th. And we almost have the two JTG Doherty cars next to each other there in 3rd and 5th. And as we go down here through the rest of the finishing order, I think we'll see that happens a lot more. And I'm not really sure why it happens. I've never really seen that before as many times as it ends up showing up on these results. So 11th through 20th. Good run for Jeffrey Earnhardt there in the 11th position, as well as Brendan Gaughan in 12th and DJ Kennington in 13th. They were the last cars on the lead lap at the end of this race, and again, it's a matter of survival. I don't know that any of them were 11th, 12th, or 13th place cars, but it's just a matter of, can you make it to the end of the race? And in fact, DJ Kennington at one point was up to 2nd. And that was very late in the race. So I don't know. This is Daytona. This is how Daytona works. I guess this is why people love Daytona. I don't really know. Bubba Wallace there in the 14th position, had a good run going most of the night, but ended up getting caught up in multiple wrecks. Good run for Ray Black Jr. there in the 51 car in 16th. Ricky Stenhouse slotted in 17th after all of his incidents. JJ Yaley in the 23 this week for BK Racing in 18th. Kevin Harvick landed in the 19th position after his wreck there on lap 162, as well as Trevor Bayne there in 20th. 21st through 30th, Clint Boyer caught up in that same wreck as Harvick there in 22nd. Jimmy Johnson, same thing in 23rd. Both Starcom cars next to each other there in 24th, 25th, Landon Castle and Joey Gase. Michael McDowell in 26th had a fantastic run going all night, and then gets caught up in a wreck very late in the night. He was running up front, battling for the lead, top 3, top 4 for the vast majority of the race before he finally got caught up in a wreck. Just a fantastic run out of Michael McDowell. I don't know that I've ever seen that good of a run out of Michael McDowell on a plate track, and it was really good to see Michael McDowell up front. Erik Almirola slots in 27th, Paul Menard 28th, and then both Chip Ganassi racing cars 29th and 30th, Kyle Larson and Jamie McMurray. So you see what I'm saying? Just all these team cars happen to land next to each other on the results. I don't know how this is happening, and it's not the last time, as we'll see here, 31st through 40th. William Byron ended up in the 32nd position after getting taken out in that wreck early on while leading. Kyle Busch 33rd, Chase Elliott 34th. All of these guys getting taken out in early wrecks. Daniel Suarez 35th, Brad Keselowski 36th, Kurt Busch 37th, Denny Hamlin 38th, and then two Penske cars down here at the bottom of the list. They got taken out in that first big one, Joey Logano and Ryan Blaney. So that is your crazy mixed up results from Daytona that don't look like a normal results sheet from any other race. In fact, you probably could have just thrown everybody in a bag, shake the bag up, and then just pull names out of that bag, and that would be your results from this race. It just, I don't know. I don't know how we get this, but that was Daytona. That was the craziness of Daytona. So let's head over to the media center, and we'll see what your top finishers on the night had to say after this one.
No, I mean, we've, for whatever reason, we run well here. My guys, they, we really work hard on setup and trying to get at least a good handling race car, especially in the 4th of July race. And, at Daytona, the last, I think, 4 races, I've had a shot to win the race. This tonight was strange. I was trying to ride at the back early on and still got wrecked and had a lot of damage on the left rear of the race car. So my guys did a good job to fix it good enough. And, I probably missed another 7 wrecks after that. It was just kind of chaos out there. So, it was a little bit of survival. And there at the end, it was just trying to make the right moves. With the damage on the left side of the race car, put a lot of drag in it. So I didn't really know if we had a great shot to win it. I knew my only shot was going to be off of turn 4 and try to make the right move. And, going down into 3, Martin was battling with Erik there and made a move and try to push Martin and obviously get as much as I could. And, we salvaged a great result out of it. We had 2 cars in the top 5 out of our race team. So, it's just a solid night. It's one of these nights where you just got to survive. It's not pretty. It's, I think that was a lot of crazy racing, but we survived.
Yeah, definitely happy to see those guys get their first win. It's, I can remember what my first win felt like. It's pretty damn amazing. So for them to get it here at a big race, it was really cool to see. I'm really, obviously wanted to beat him, but happy for him. If you're going to, run second to somebody, that's kind of the story I guess you'd want to see out of it. So, all in all, I think for us it was a good night and, did all the things we needed to do. I'm just, I got to work on my mirror driving skills. I'm not real good at it. I never have been. And, just happy, to get through here alive and finish. I joked all week that I hadn't finished this race in 8 or 10 years, and that's not I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's not really. It's true and sad. So to finally get to the end of one of these races and then have a shot at it was cool. I wish I could have done a better job for my team because our car was really fast, and I felt like it was for sure the best car we've had on the plate tracks probably the last 2 years. And the good news is it's still one piece, so I feel good about that. But definitely congrats to Erik and his team. They've been fighting hard to get to where they're at, and always good to see a first-time winner. Maybe ISC and those guys can be a little bit happier about things.
I thought it would have took longer. I mean, when I won the Snowball Derby in 2012, I was 16 years old, and I didn't have any opportunities in NASCAR at that point, so I kind of thought I was going to find something else to do pretty soon. But, I thought at that point I was going to get maybe some, smaller opportunities for other teams, but that kind of changed everything for me. So it really, these last 6 years have flown by. I mean, it doesn't seem like, what was it, 2,044 days ago? It doesn't seem like that. So it's definitely went by quickly, and I never would have thought 6 years would have went by so quick. But looking back right now over the 6 years and what all has happened and places I've been, things I've done, it's flown by.
And we'll take a look at the playoff grid before wrapping up here tonight. As we see, obviously, Erik Jones slots into the winner column. He's now locked into the playoffs. He was already in the playoffs, in on points. Wasn't in by much, but he was in on points before this. But this just kind of locks him in and secures that position now as he sits in 6th. And a lot of shuffling this week, obviously, with the jumbled up finishing order. People finishing worse than they usually finish. Some people finishing better than they usually finish. This has really shaken up the playoff grid a little bit this week. Everybody more or less kind of lost points to the cutoff line. And the cutoff line is a lot closer than it was before. Now only 19 points between Alex Bowman and Ricky Stenhouse. Denny Hamlin falling down to 11th this week. Ryan Blaney all the way down to 13th after finishing in 40th. You got the 3 Hendrick cars down here at the bottom of the playoff grid. Jimmy Johnson, Chase Elliott, and Alex Bowman. Ryan Newman jumped a couple spots this week into 19th, but he's still 94 points behind the cutoff line. So with as few races we have left until the playoffs, he's so far back, he's probably going to need a win. And at this point, I think Paul Menard has now fallen so far back that he is probably going to need a win as well, now 55 points back. Realistically, I think right now the only person that outside the playoffs really has a shot at pointing his way in is Ricky Stenhouse. I mean, 19 points is not an insurmountable gap. But the question is, can he point his way in? We've seen Alex Bowman run pretty consistently lately. Obviously, last night was the anomaly as he, but it's Daytona. You go into Daytona not necessarily expecting a good run, and you're excited when you do come out with a good run because it means you missed all the wrecks, or you missed most of the wrecks at least. So it's going to be interesting going forward to see how this cutoff line works, if Ricky Stenhouse is able to point his way in or not. And again, we still may have another surprise winner going forward from outside the playoffs that could win their way in, and that could really jumble some things up. So that'll be exciting to watch going forward. But I think that will do it for us tonight on the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind show. If you haven't done it already, go down below, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward. We just put up an ARCA Rewind show a little bit ago for last night's Fans with Benefits 150 from the Iowa Speedway, so you want to check that out, as well as an Xfinity Rewind for Friday night's Xfinity race from Daytona, as well as pole position coming up on Monday night at 8 p.m. talking about all of that, plus IndyCar from Iowa and F1 from Silverstone, so you want to check that out tomorrow night, 8 p.m. right here on Racing News Now. And if you haven't done it already, hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It's much appreciated when you do. So with that, this has been the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.